This is Support is Sexy, episode 102, with Erin Woodward, founder of the Girly Book Club. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. You know, I'm excited to have you here because it just would not be the same without you. So today we are welcoming, this is one of my favorite kinds of guests to have on the show. Today's guest is Erin Woodward, and Erin is the founder of the Girly Book Club. And the reason I mention her as one of the favorite guest types is because she considers herself an accidental entrepreneur. So one of those people who sort of not stumbled into their business, but created something that they were passionate about, created something that they wanted or needed in their lives, something that they saw maybe as a void, and it became a beautiful, glorious, grand, and in Erin's case, a global business. So on this episode, Erin talks about how the Girly Book Club started as just her wanting to meet up with some like-minded women, and how it has now grown into 46 chapters in 8 countries around the world with more than 30,000 members. So like I said, small idea, accidental entrepreneur, becomes something beautiful and glorious. So on this episode, what you'll learn from Erin is how to know when it's time to take your business seriously, when it may be time to transition from moonlighting to full-time, how to manage a global brand, how to determine team leaders who can serve as the face of your brand, the importance of creating space for authentic connections, scaling your brand by going virtual, her top 3 recent reads. You know, we had to ask that. I mean, she runs a book club. You got to know what she's reading. One of the biggest myths about entrepreneurship. Erin's top tips for the first steps you should take if you want to develop a group or an event as part of your business. And also the importance of modeling. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com for more information on Erin, to find out more about the Girly Book Club. Also, some information she mentions in here about how you can become a contributor. I'll have links to that on her show notes page. So supportissexypodcast.com, search Erin, and you'll find all of the information there, as well as previous episodes with other women entrepreneurs that we've interviewed. All right, so without further ado, Erin Woodward. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Now, the first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, I'm not sure I even know how to answer that question. I never grew up thinking, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I want to own my own business. My business came about in a very different way. So I'm not sure. Until it was really in my lap, did I ever think to myself, yes, I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
So you were sort of an accidental entrepreneur, as they say.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Now, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in New York or in Toronto or?
I actually grew up in Canada, in just outside of Toronto, in a very small town of 25,000 people. But I lived a lot of places over my childhood, and then over the last 10 years, I've really bounced around a lot.
Okay, maybe that's why I keep trying to put you in New York, and you're like, no, I'm not from New York. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. I was in New York very recently until July of this year. I lived there for 2 years, so it's not far-fetched.
Okay. Now, what was Erin like as a young girl?
I don't know. It was probably, my parents both grew up in a very small town. So when I was 10, they actually sent me off to live in Indonesia, as you do with your 10-year-old. So I was very inquisitive about the world, about the places where we could go and travel. And I was loud and rambunctious.
Now, why Indonesia?
I actually have an uncle that lives in Indonesia, lives in Bali.
Oh.
Lucky him. So my mother decided I should go to school in Bali with my cousins. So I lived there for the year.
What was that? Do you remember what that experience was like, or how it's shaped just your worldview overall?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 10 years is probably, I mean, you remember stuff before then, but Mom wanted to make sure that I did remember everything and I did gain something that I could take with me through my life. So I think that that's when I got the travel bug. I actually worked in travel before. I recently left my full-time job to pursue my current business, but I did work in travel, and I have traveled to over 53 countries. So I think that's what started my love of travel was probably when I was 10, and I realized that the world did not just consist of a small town an hour and a half north of Toronto.
Right. I love that. Now, what were some of who were some of your greatest influences growing up?
Probably my uncle, the one that lived in Indonesia. That family was, they'd traveled all over the world, and they lived a really different lifestyle than those that were around me and those that I met through my childhood just in my small town. And also my mother. Absolutely. My mother's traveled far more than I have. She's spent the last 50 years traveling. So definitely my mom.
So how do you think who you were as a young girl, and especially the part of your life that was very much, and I'm sure still is very much about travel, has translated to who you are as an entrepreneur today?
Well, I run a global company, and as a startup company, that's kind of tricky because usually startup companies start in a small town or in a city, and they get momentum, and after that, they end up kind of expanding, and then they'll take another market and another market. Whereas we're doing it kind of very differently. We are all over the place, and we're very small, but we are operating in 10 different countries. So I think that. I think of myself as a global being. I've lived a lot of places. I lived in London, England for 7 years. So I think that has translated into what I'm creating now.
So tell us about what you've created now, the Girly Book Club. I love it. Love it. Love it. What is it? Tell us about it and how it started, especially since you mentioned that it was sort of, I don't want to say it just sort of happened, but it sort of happened. You didn't expect
Absolutely.
it to be a business. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, I moved to England. I had an African romance. I met an Englishman, and I decided that I should move to England to be with him. So when I got to England, I was there for about a year. I had a job. I worked in PR, and I had a great job, but I worked at a very small firm, and I decided that if I was going to stay in England, then I absolutely needed to meet some friends. Mm-hmm. So I went online looking for a book club to join, and I couldn't find one. And I decided, well, I'll just start my own. So I named it the Girly Book Club, and I used a third-party website called meetup.com, which I'm sure lots of people are familiar with.
Right.
And London is hugely transient, so all of a sudden I had 100 members, and it happened almost overnight. And I didn't ever, I guess I thought about it, but I didn't ever cap the number of women that could attend. The next thing I knew, the women that were members in London were traveling home. They were moving back to the countries they'd come from, and they were really sad to leave the book club behind because it had really been a part of their life in London. So all of a sudden, these book clubs were starting to pop up with my help in different countries and different cities all over the world. So now we operate, like I said, in 8 countries. We have 46 chapters around the world, and we have 35,000 members. All of the women read the same book at the same time. It's called the Girly Book Club, and it was really something that started because I had the need myself when I lived in London and didn't know anybody. So I think that that's why it's been so successful, and it's caught on so much because it was addressing a problem that I had myself.
Okay, wow, it's a fascinating story. Now, to start, when you set it up on meetup.com, what did you say? Did you just say, oh, I want to meet people and read a book? Or what was the setup when you first started it initially?
It was on meetup.com. It was really just about finding like-minded women. The problem with a lot of meetups, I think, is that you don't have anything in common, and it's really for a lot of women to walk into a room where they don't know anybody and have to just start talking. A lot of people are very shy, and it's scary. Mm-hmm. So with the book club, they always have the book in common, and it's a 2-hour commitment. So it seemed when I first launched it that it was just the right amount of time. And even though you might not have absolutely anything else in common with one of the women that you'll meet, you can talk about the book, which is a very safe zone. So I think that that was my initial thought behind launching it. I was looking for about 8 friends that I could go brunching with and I'd go shopping, and it kind of spiraled out of control.
And it turned into 100 or more than 100. So did you tell the book that you were going to read before you all arrived at the meetup, or did you decide once you were there?
No, we've always had a book that you read before you got there. So everybody had that in common. When they walked in the door, they'd all read the same book, and that still exists today.
And then at what point did you begin to sense that, as you said, I know it was sort of when people started going back home to wherever they were originally from or relocating, that you saw it begin to grow. But at what point did you really feel like I'm on to something? Because at the time, was this when you were working at the travel agency?
I was working for a company called Small Luxury Hotels of the World, and I had a great job. I was director of PR for the brand. So I had no complaints there at all. I was traveling the world and staying in luxury hotels, but there was just something. It was just growing at such a fast speed, and the stories were kind of filtering back to me in London, telling me about how people loved the brand and how they loved the meetings and how many great friends they've made. And all of a sudden, I was like, there's nothing quite like what I do out there. And so we incorporated in London about 3 years ago. I was still working full time, and I did until recently. But everybody just loved it so much, and it was such a resounding success for what it was that, I think it was probably when we incorporated that I realized, okay, even if I can only run this on the side, I need to get this up and running and try and move forward.
And then how do you work with women who start and it's only women, right? The Girly Book Club.
That's correct.
Great, excellent. I just wanted to make sure. So how do you work with women in other places? What's the setup for how you manage that? Because you have people all around the world now who are starting, or I guess leading different chapters.
Yes, that's right. I have a chapter host in each city, and it's
okay.
I'll set up the website. They all get their own dedicated website to facilitate their events. And what I do is I set up the website and I say we're launching in this city, and then it's really organic women that it really appeals to a certain woman. She's probably an extrovert, or maybe an introvert that wants to challenge herself, and somebody who likes to organize things. They like to public speak, and usually I have somebody come forward that gets in touch with me and says, "Oh, I see you've started a chapter near me. I would really like to be involved." And then I send them a pack, and they read all about how they can be involved and how they can facilitate the meetings. And I do all the admin on our side and with the website and whatnot. And we find all the ladies to attend the meetings. It's really just being there on the night, being that smiling face when they walk through the door, and putting everybody at ease.
I love that. And now all the chapters, everyone reads the same book at the same time, though. It's not different chapters aren't reading different books. You all still globally are reading the same stories at the same time. That's
correct. Yeah, we read. We do a global poll. It used to be chosen. I used to just choose the books, but now we get a little bit more flexibility, and it's open to all the groups to vote on which book really appeals to them.
And at what point did you say, because I know you mentioned that you left your full-time position just recently, when did that moment come about? And I ask that because that's something that a lot of our listeners are going through. Either they're moonlighting, have their business that they work on after hours, or they're thinking about making that transition. And I know the moment is different for everyone, depending on your business and where you are. But what was it like for you to finally make that decision to say, I'm going for this full-time?
I think that's really tricky. I spent 3 years having the business incorporated, running as a business before I actually said, okay, I'm going to do this. It's scary too. I don't have children, but I know a lot of women who it's a big risk when you decide to leave something so stable as a full-time job.
Right.
So I actually moved back to Canada, and I was working part-time for my company from New York. And then I just decided, you know what, now's the time. It was funny because I was working for them part-time, but obviously I wasn't making as much as I would be if I was working for them full-time, but it was that the money that was coming in that wasn't pushing me to really commit 100% to the book club. So kind of breaking all those ties, it puts an urgency on you to really get everything up and running, and because you need to make money at the end of the day as well. So I think it's important when you're an entrepreneur.
How did you go about making that transition? Did you just decide to resign, or did you sort of slowly weed yourself off, or how did it work for you?
Well, I was working till July full-time in New York City as the PR director for the brand, and then I decided to move to Canada. My family's here. My parents are getting older, so moving to Canada, it changed my role a lot. I couldn't really work full-time for the brand in Canada, so that changed it by deciding to move to Canada. I mean, it was a big change in that role. And then once I got here and got everything running and working for them just on a part-time basis, that's really what pushed me to decide to go full-time for the book club.
So now for you, I noticed that you guys just announced on November 15th that you're going virtual, can't read my own handwriting, going virtual. Tell us about that with the book club and how that positions you to grow even more.
Well, I get a lot of emails from women being like, well, you don't have a chapter here. And then I'll look up, my geography is not great as far as America goes. I mean, we have 22 chapters in America as it is right now, but there's obviously a lot of towns, a lot of smaller cities in America. And I'll get emails mostly from Americans being like, you're not in my city. And I'm like, well, I feel bad. Uh-huh. So the online virtual book club was kind of a response to that, to being able to bring what we do to everybody. And what we're just doing a tester right now for November's book, but moving forward in January, we'll actually have 4 different time slots each month so that we can get as much of the world as would like to participate on this virtual book club. So that's what kind of prompted the beginning of that.
And how does that work? Do people go on to your website and sign up to be a part of the virtual book club?
Well, currently it's not live on our website, but it will be very soon. Okay. And yes, they can sign up to belong to that. We're also going to offer it to our members that we have a yearly membership. So they will sign up to belong to the yearly membership, and that'll give them access to both, whether they want to go to a chapter close to them, or if they want to go online one month because perhaps they can't make it or the timing's not right for them that month, then at least because there's nothing worse than reading a book than not having anybody to talk to about it, right. Especially if you feel very, very strong about the book.
Right. Now, how does it work as far as a revenue model? Is it that it's a membership site and people pay a certain amount to be part of the group?
So currently we actually operate as an event fee. So each event, every time you go to an actual meeting, no matter where you are, there's a very small fee to attend that meeting. Okay. But we are going to move to a membership model so that we have a lot of loyal members that come every month. So we'll be offering them a discounted rate that they can buy it for the year and then it's done. We'll also be offering a premium membership, which I mean, it sounds silly because it is so easy to download books and buy them from Amazon. But I mean, everybody has a million things to do every day. And if you can just have that book arrive at your door 6 weeks before the meeting, it just takes the guesswork out of it completely. So that is our premium membership. It's either an ebook or an actual physical book that will be delivered to them. 6 weeks gives them lots of time to read the book, and then they're just all prepared, and they didn't have to do anything to get prepared other than read the book, of course.
I love that, and that's what that sounds like a great idea, just any level of membership model, because you have so many passionate people who are passionate about the brand, obviously, but then what you're creating, I'm sure people would want to pay to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, we hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they will. I'm putting it out in the universe. I'm sure they will. So
thank you.
What would you say is your vision overall for the brand? I mean, is it the largest book club for women in the world right now? Not online. There's you have Oprah Winfrey, who clearly has a huge book club, but that is an online book club. I don't think that I've ever seen anything quite like what we do, knock on wood. Knock on wood. We connect women in real time, in real life. So I think that's really our strength. And I mean, we are launching the virtual book club, but it's still about connecting with other people,
The virtual book club does have an appeal to it because you'll be connecting with women all over the world. Again, it's just in a different platform. Instead of face-to-face, you'll be connecting with them online. But we use a platform that actually allows for video conferencing. So you'll be able to look at one another and discuss. And it's a bit different than being in person, but it still allows women to connect in more of a real way.
How important is that connection, do you think, for women overall, and then certainly for your members? Is connection something that you think really drives a part of your business?
For the day-to-day, or not day-to-day, sorry, but for the in-person meetings, absolutely. When I get to go to my book club meetings, no matter where they are held, I did go to a Toronto book club meeting not too long ago, and this woman comes up to me and just gives me this big hug, and she goes, "You've changed my life." And it's because she was going through a very difficult point in her life, and she found the women that were going to support her through that period of her life at the book club. So, she attributed it to me, which is very kind of her, but it really is about that connection and those women that she's met. And it's changed her life. And I've heard so many stories like this, women who have traveled all over the world together, women who have been in each other's bridal parties. It's just a really nice way to connect women.
And how has it changed your life in the form of connection or other ways?
Well, in London, all of my friends I met through the book club. So I did stay there for 7 years in the end, and I have friendships from that period in my life that I will have forever. In New York, the same thing. I moved to another city and met a lot of wonderful people through the book club again. So it's changed my life just as it's changed everybody who comes up to me and thanks me.
What would you say is your vision overall for the Girly Book Club?
I just love to have more and more clubs, have more and more involvement. I'd love to have a discussion area where you it's rampant with discussion, but from women from all over the world. So somebody's view from India might be different from somebody's view from Vancouver, and just being able to provide that forum where they can discuss a book that's like a really interesting book. And I think that's really interesting. And yeah, just to be really all over the place.
All over the place. You're headed that way. Now, I have to ask you, what are your 3 favorite books right now? I know you've read tons, but what are your 3, or your 3 most recent books?
Well, I just finished a absolutely amazing book. It's called Nearly Normal by Sia Pearson. And she is a Canadian author, which I love. Uh-huh. But she's actually, it's not out yet. It's coming out January 31st. One of the big perks of my job is that I get to read books before they come out.
All right. Those early copies.
But this is her second memoir. The first memoir is North and Normal, and you should pick that copy up first anyways, because you need to read it. Absolutely. But she was born in the northern Alberta, and it's just, they lived in a teepee for years of her childhood, and it's unfathomable what she went through as a child. So that's a very compelling read. What else have I read? Well, of course, the Emily Bleeker book, which is When I'm Gone, and it's, as the title suggests, it's not. It doesn't start off particularly happy, but that is an official Girly Book Club book, which we are reading this month.
And she's the first. She's going to be a guest for your virtual book club, right?
That is correct. She's going to be on my virtual, our first virtual book club. So that's coming up next week. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely recommend her book. It's sad, but it's very well written and very compelling story as well. And what is another book that I've recently read? Only Daughter. And I'm going to mispronounce her last name, but her first name is Anna. And I think it's reminiscent of Girl on a Train. It's one of those thrilling, you're not sure who's done what when. It's definitely a page turner. So I suggest you pick up a copy of that as well.
Excellent. I will have links for everyone listening. I'll have links to all of those, but it's good to hear just what someone whose business is all about reading books, what you've been loving lately. So we'll have links to all of those. Now, what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting industry because it is, more and more women are definitely coming into the picture, but it is very male dominated. And I've worked at quite a few in New York. I worked at quite a few co-working spaces. But what have I learned about myself as a woman? I feel like women are really driven. Not to say that men aren't, but it's just a different kind of drive. Mm-hmm. And I've really found that, going from a 9-to-5 job and then working on your own as an entrepreneur, it's funny because I always thought I would never work more than 8 hours a day. But when you're working for yourself for one, and you're working in kind of a strange atmosphere. It's not an office necessarily. You're kind of popping in and out of co-working spaces, of coffee shops, I even go down to the mall sometimes. I end up working a lot of hours. But I really enjoy it. So it's kind of this different beast to when I was working for somebody else. I think that's probably been the most enlightening thing about what I've learned as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's one of the biggest myths I think some people have is, as you said, you think, oh, okay, being an entrepreneur, I might I'll be able to control my own time, and this way I won't work so many hours. But then because you love it, you work more, but then also because it requires so much more of your time, you end up working more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at least it feels different though.
Yeah, I mean, it feels completely different. I don't know how I could work for anybody else now.
Right, exactly. Now, what would you say your advice would be, maybe a first step? What would be your advice for other women listening who might want to start a business, not necessarily similar to yours in the form of a book club, but just something where people are meeting up or gathering, or they want to, create connection with a group of people around some similar mission or interest, as you said earlier? What would be the first step you would advise them to do when looking to create something like that?
I think that probably the best thing that I learned along the way is to really ask the questions of the people that you're trying to engage. Get together a focus group or send out a survey monkey or something, but just the people, your target market is really, really interested in feeding back to you about what they want and what they need. And if you ask them, they will tell you. So my business model wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And it's really your business rarely ends up being what you thought it was going to be. But by asking the questions, I feel like you are not going to go down the wrong routes if you're really open. And sometimes we get answers we don't want to hear, but yeah, really taking your target market and asking them what they want and what makes sense for them. Then you hopefully will alleviate any of those big or missteps.
Right. And do you think, is that the best way, going someplace like your own friends on social media or going into groups that are around the area that you're interested in? So say you were going to moms and you want to join a moms group on Facebook or whatever and ask those kinds of questions. What's the best way, do you think, to go about asking those questions? And I ask that because some people say not to ask friends because friends might just tell you, what's kind or what you want to hear, as opposed to someone who really is your target. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. Social media is very strong. Joining groups or even joining meetups there's so many meetups online that explore so many different topics. So that you could actually go and be in an environment with people that have that interest, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, or social media groups, like you said, there's so many different ways to get to groups of people that share certain interests now, that that's probably the best bet.
And then for you, what have you learned about really management? Because from a certain perspective, you're managing these people who are hosts in different areas. I know it's not day-to-day management, but just what have you learned about choosing the right people to be a representative for your brand, and then about working with people all over the world?
That's a really good question because I managed a team when I worked full time for the travel industry, and it's a lot different than managing. They worked full time for the company, whereas these are volunteers, so that's a completely different ball game. They're incentivized, they get books and whatnot, but it really has to be somebody who has a passion for what I'm doing, and they really need to believe in my goals and my vision for the company. So usually I get an email and they said, I'm really interested. And then we have a phone call, and it is an interview at the end of the day. I mean, you're interviewing for a volunteer position, but you really do need to make sure, because at the end of the day, they're on the front lines. Whether they're going to succeed with the book club on that level, whereas I can't. I mean, I can only do so much from here. I'm not there. I'm not attending their meetings. So yeah, it's so important to pick the right people, that I think that you should spend a lot of time on that. Absolutely.
What do you spend, or I should say, what are some of your questions or the way that you know that, okay, this could be a right person? Now, of course, I'm not saying that just by that you'll know. You never know until you're actually working with the person, as in any company or business. But what do you feel like are the things that you look for that make you say, okay, this person seems like they get it?
Well, it's just mostly it's a feeling. Mm-hmm. Usually when I have a call with somebody, it's almost like their level of excitement about the project. I have some of my best hosts they were just hugely excited from day one, and they've kind of never wavered on that. They don't need to have a certain background. I don't need an English degree. It's nothing like that. It really is just how excited they are to be working with the book club. That sounds so silly.
No, it doesn't. It makes sense.
Okay. It is. It really is. It really does come down to that. And I mean, I do ask them about kind of their extra, the other things that they have on their plate, whether they work full time, whether they have a family, different things that would interfere, or, I mean, not interfere. That's always their number one priority, of course, is their family and their other work, but just other things that they have to juggle. And we usually find a co-host for all the book clubs. So nobody's really doing it on their own. It's something that can always come up. You never know. So having somebody in that can take over at a moment's notice is always really helpful.
What does your support network look like outside of the hosts and people that work sort of for you? But what does your support network look like?
Well, my support network is, ironically, I'm very, very good friends. And being back in Toronto, where I'm from, a lot of my friends have moved to the city now. So mostly my support network is actually my friends that don't actually read, and it's such a funny thing. But they don't come to book club, but they have their strengths in 100 different other ways, and so they're always helping me with the book club. But it's not because they're really into literature or reading, or that they want to go to the book club. So it's kind of funny that way.
It's because they love you. That's what a lot of us say. I know I have friends who have no interest in podcasts and that, or not the kind that I do, and that kind of thing. But they support you because it's you, and they want to see you succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you feel like sometimes you need people outside of that thing that you spend all of your time doing to sort of help you balance?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's nice to have a conversation not about books. I mean, I write articles for InStyle, and it's all about books, and everything I do is about books now. So I certainly like to escape the book world now and again.
Right. I meant to ask you earlier, too, not to bring you back to books, but I meant to ask you earlier, too, if you have any business books that you've read lately because I know most of them are novels or memoirs, or at least the ones you mentioned. But are there any? I read a ton of business books when I first started a couple of years ago, but I haven't read anything recently that I would recommend. I do feel like I need to visit the bookstore. I don't go to the bookstore anymore because I sent so many books now, but absolutely. I actually can't recommend anything off the top of my head. Okay. I was just wondering if there were any that you read recently or before. Do you remember one that you read when you first started that was sort of a game changer for you?
I think The Tipping Point was probably one of the best books that I read. And I mean, that's not particularly, it's just like the fundamental theories about how it all works. It was really interesting to me. Yeah. He's such a great author, but
I have all of his books, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. He really knows what he's talking about. I think that was probably one of the most important books I read, or Steve Jobs' autobiography. I read that a couple of years ago as well.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that yet. I'll put that on my list. Very good.
Very interesting person, very interesting leader.
When you think about your company, is there, even though I know you're doing something that outside of Oprah, you're doing something that is very unique and original, Is there any company, though, that you would say that you sort of model yourself after, or whose strategy or anything is an influence on you?
Early on, we looked at a company out of the UK, and it was called Glossybox. Mm-hmm. And the reason we looked at them is because they have great marketing and they have great emails. I think something happened to them over the years, though, because I stopped getting stuff from them, but then have recently started to get more emails from them. But they had a great membership scheme. So we were really looking at kind of the way that they were mailing stuff each month as well. So I think it's something like Birchbox in the UK, or in the US rather. And it's like that little makeup box you get every month, and it's so exciting because it's all these new samples and stuff.
Right.
And it's completely different than what we do, but it was mailing something on a membership fee each month, and that's what our premium membership does. So we looked at the way that they were marketing and their membership structure, and we learned a lot from them.
How important is that for people to do? That's why I asked that, because I think I'm a big fan of modeling, and it's not the same as copying what someone else is doing, but just looking at other companies that might not even have the same kind of business, but may have a structure that you're interested in.
No, I think why reinvent the wheel? Absolutely. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of great things out there, and that's why we have these meetups, and we meet. I'm a part of the Canadian women's startup meetup. So you go every month, and you meet other women who are working in. We're all at different positions in our business, but we all have the same struggles. So talking to other companies that have gone through some of the similar things you have, and they've come up with solutions. So absolutely, modeling after what they're doing it's just smart.
Yeah, I think that's so important that you mentioned that too. Also joining women's entrepreneur groups or things like that, as well as groups that are about what you're interested in. Because as you said, even if you don't have the same kind of business or you're not at the same level, you still have some shared experiences, or you can learn something from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I had some good friends in New York that I had met through the startup community. It's very strong in New York City. And nobody else, it's like when you have a child, nobody else knows what it's like unless they've had the child as well. So I feel like that's very similar in a startup business. And there's always things that you go through that, wrong turns, lots of those. So having others that are in the same position as you, it's just something that you can share, and it's just helpful to have that kind of support.
Absolutely. Now, in closing, if you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
That would be my mom. My mom has always been there for me. She's the one person who's always believed in me. She believes in what I'm doing. I haven't, but if I needed it, she would be there with her checkbook. She would be there no matter what. And she's the reason that I traveled all over the world. She's the reason I lived the life I lived. So absolutely my mother.
I love that. We love Mom.
I know.
So tell us now, how can we support you? I'll have links to the website, of course, but tell everyone where to find you on social media and anything else that you want us to do to support you.
Well, thank you. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. It's Girly Book Club. Our website is girlybookclub.com. Just go and check us out. Even if you're just looking for really good book recommendations, we're pretty solid on that.
Yeah, and you guys do great reviews too.
Yeah, we have a huge team of bloggers. We have about 36 bloggers. So I can't possibly read all the books I receive. So instead, we ship them out to our blogging program and have wonderful women all over the world reading our books and reviewing them for us.
And I noticed you had a call out, actually, I think it was maybe on Facebook, where you were looking for some additional reviewers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody is interested in reviewing books for the Girly Book Club, you can just email us at info@girlybookclub.com, and we can get you all signed up to do that for us.
Okay, what should they, in case people listening are interested, what should they say? Just that they're interested in reviewing, or is there anything you need them to send you?
No, what we do is we do a trial review. So we'll send them a book, and they get to say whether it's of interest to them. Nobody has to read anything that doesn't kind of sit well with them.
Right.
So we send them an initial book, and then they also with a kind of an outline of the steps that they need to take. And it's about 250 to 300 words. So it's not a long review at all. and they take a kind of a candid photo of the book, and they send that all over to me within 6 weeks of receiving the book, and then it goes online, and as long as it's well done, then yeah, that's the start of a relationship.
Excellent. We love that. I'll have a link to that email too. info@girlybookclub.com.
Sorry, I think it's actually info@thegirlybookclub.com.
Okay. Excellent. info@thegirlybookclub.com. Excellent. So now thank you so much for being here, Erin. I really appreciate you, and even through all our technical difficulties in the beginning, for sticking it out.
Thank you, Elayne. I mean, what you do is amazing. You're incredible.
Oh, thank you. So before you go, can you give us a last piece of advice, a parting word, if you will?
I think take risks. I think that's, you never know where your life is going to go, and you only get one shot at this. So I think take risks.
Take risk. I love it. Erin, hold on just a second for me. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you so much for listening. What you can do now is go over to supportissexypodcast.com to find other episodes with other inspiring women entrepreneurs that I've interviewed in the past. Check them out there. And while you're there, please also make sure that you subscribe to my email list so that you don't miss an episode. You don't miss any of the great resources that I share with people. I won't spam your inbox, only the good stuff. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, click on subscribe at the top, and sign up for our email list. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.